Film critic and broadcaster Anna Smith, welcome to the Cambridge Film Trust, and thank you for taking part and telling us about a film you love. Now, you've worked on so many outlets as a film critic: BBC News, Sky News, you've written for the Metro, Empire, The Guardian, also the host of the Girls on Film podcast, which I really wanted to chat about in a little while. But first, can you start off by telling us about the film you've chosen and why you've chosen it?
I've chosen BOOKSMART. This is one of my favourite films of recent years, and I have really vivid memories of seeing it in the cinema with a really good old friend. And it's a female buddy movie, so it was just the perfect film to see with her. And it's one we've championed a lot on Girls on Film, so it's very close to my heart.
Yeah, I was listening actually back to your Girls on Film episode about the films. The film was released in 2019, and for this particular Girls on Film episode, you spoke to critic Karen Krasanovic about it, and to the two main stars of the film, Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever. Can you tell me a bit about the chemistry between the two actresses and between their characters in BOOKSMART?
Well, I think it's a case of art imitating life, or at least good casting, because in BOOKSMART, it revolves around two bookish girls that decide to finally start partying after years of studying very hard and being the sort of very serious girls. And they have one very eventful night. And a lot of the journey of the film is very much about their friendship. I mean, dramatic things happen along the way. There are love interests, but it's very much focused on the two of them and the kind of journey that they're going on in their friendship, the ups and downs that they encounter with these kind of new stresses and new excitements of going out and sort of mixing with a lot of other people. So they're kind of insular people that are suddenly becoming extrovert. And that was interesting to look at in the light of the chemistry between the two of them when you actually meet them. I would say that Beanie Feldstein is even more cute and bubbly in real life than she is in the film. She's just such a glows, positivity. She's absolutely gorgeous. And Caitlin is so lovely as well. I mean, she always recognises me and comes up and says hello at award ceremonies and stuff. So, which you don't actually get that often when you just interviewed someone once or twice. So, so they're lovely and they are genuinely close. They finish each other's sentences. They have a real fondness for each other. It's visible, the kind of reaction they have to each other and the fondness they have for each other, and that I think really comes across in the podcast as well.
Yeah, it does. And it was I loved hearing about how so for example, the costume department had kind of got them little name necklaces, which you couldn't even you won't be able to see in the film, but as a way of kind of grounding their friendship and their characters. I think those touches were really lovely. And actually, on the kind of costume department, behind the scenes, it's a very female it's a strong female film, not only in the characters but in the director and the writers as well. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, Olivia Wilde, who is better known as an actress initially, turns out to be a phenomenal director. I just thought this was such an amazing debut from her, and she's also got a fantastic team of female writers behind her as well, some of whom have directed in their own right. So a really strong team of comedy women who really balance, I think, the drama and the comedy very, very well, and they don't talk down to young people either. This isn't one of those teen movies which feels kind of cliched and everyone's stuck in a little box. And I think Olivia Wilde brings quite a feminine sensibility and a real empathy to the characters that she portrays, and she is evidently really good at dealing with actors and getting a rapport going with them. And she's fast becoming one of the most promising female directors working in that, or just directors working in that sort of field. It's a real strong collaborative effort from a lot of great women.
And was it in the interview that you did with her for Metro? I think she said it was the first job she had where her looks weren't defining her, which is kind of depressing, but maybe kind of empowering for her. I mean, I don't know. What else was it that she told you about working on the film?
Well, yeah, that's a really interesting point, I think, because women who are very beautiful and talented often find a stepping stone into cinema through that very thing, their beauty, because of the structure of the industry and the prejudice. But also you could say the same of some men as well, of course. Look at Brad Pitt or someone. But I think in her case, it's a double-edged sword. And that's definitely the impression I got speaking to her, because of course women are so often dismissed this assumption is that they don't have any other talents if they're pretty, which is ridiculous. But yeah, talking to her, it was wonderful to see how funny she is and how clever she is and everything you'd expect, actually having watched the film. But also how collaborative she is with the people around her. And you know, she's I think her husband's in the business as well, you know, and he's a comedian. And I think being in that world, she's almost been a woman in a lad's world for quite a long time, but now it's great to see her taking on that field and putting her own spin on it.
And I think, I mean, one of the things I love about the film is, well, it's the two main leads, but there's the cast, even peripheral characters who might only have a couple of scenes, they feel really well-rounded. And there's a few characters who surprise you with their character arc throughout the film, because I kind of maybe put them as sort of the one-dimensional, like, oh, well, he's the jock, or he's, you know, the nerd or whatever. And then they seem to they seem to kind of become more well-rounded. I was wondering, like, do you have any favorites from the sort of the minor roles within this film?
Oh, do you know, there's so many that make me laugh out loud. And I think you're absolutely right that a lot of the thrust of the film is the fact that people have a power to surprise you. And that really plays the kind of teen movie tropes and college movie tropes, as you say, which is something like going back to The Breakfast Club even tried to achieve. You know, we're not just a nerd, you know, not just the cool girl. But this takes it much further, and I think it does it with more of a sense of reality. Favorites, it's hard to pick. I actually really like the teacher that rocks up to the party. Maybe it's my age, but it's just the fact that she can get down with the cool kids. And she said she's got this amazing trunk full of fantastically sparkly clothes. I think she's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. And actually, it's a film I've only seen it once, but actually thinking about it and talking about it definitely makes me want to see it again. I mean, who would you recommend? Who is it for, like, as a sort of typical audience, or would you say it is a film for everyone?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think it's a 15 certificate, so it's not super young, but I think it certainly appeals to teenagers, but way beyond that, because it really is clever and smart. And as you suggested, it really stands up to repeat viewing. I've only seen it maybe 2 or 3 times, and I think there are definitely details I notice every time. This is really strong filmmaking. So I think that's the kind of thing that, like something like Back to the Future, it will, you know, continue to please generations of different ages to come. I think because it stands up to that, and it's got all these complex characters. So certainly, you know, I think people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s can enjoy it. You know, it's got lots to offer, because the characters aren't typical teen movie stereotypes, and it does go deeper than that. And I think the comedy doesn't just rely on, you know, crude humor, which sometimes can be the case in that genre. It's very much character-based humor, and farcical physical humor. And it's also got really lovely kind of emotional arc to it. So I think there's a lot more to that in terms of its appeal than some people might initially think if they just looked at the poster or saw that it was a college comedy.
And so let's go on to Girls on Film. So this podcast, it's a film podcast from a feminist perspective, and you launched it in October 2018. Can you just tell us about how it all came about and the sort of reaction that you've had from it?
Well, I launched it with Hedda Archbold, who is the executive producer, and she suggested I do it when I told her about an idea for a TV show. So it was actually Girls on Film was an idea I had a long time ago for a TV show with all women talking about film, because I was, you know, starting to get TV gigs, which was great because, you know, as a film critic, I talk on the TV quite a lot. But I was always going on with men, or in the film shows, it was men talking to men. You never saw women talking to women about film. So I was like, we need to change this. So Hedda said, let's do it as a podcast. And what we wanted to do is really shine a light on the great female film critics that are out there that are often not given so much of a voice or as much column space as the men. Even though there's some great male critics out there, you know, we're not against that. And we have had male guests, you know, who've made great films about women. But we also wanted to shine a light on the fantastic female filmmakers and the female focused content and diverse content that is coming into cinemas of all genres. And we also wanted to look at, you know, mainstream films that might not seem feminist or might not be feminist from that perspective. such as Tenet or Ant-Man and the Wasp, you know, and really dig deep into the female characters of that. And those have been some of our really popular episodes.
Great. And have you got any kind of personal highlights from people that you've spoken to through doing Girls on Film?
We have been so lucky to have all these amazing actors and filmmakers come on, but Kerry Mulligan was our actual first in episode 3, and she's lovely. But I tell you what, Linda Hamilton from the Terminator movies, you can't get much better than that. You know, as a feminist who loves time travel and sci-fi, I was like, oh my gosh. So going to a gorgeous 5-star hotel to chat with her and her co-stars for the latest Terminator film was a real treat.
That's brilliant. Anna Smith, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to Cambridge Film Trust, and thank you for choosing BOOKSMART. It's such a brilliant choice. Thanks ever so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.